The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this morning's role play session with your host, James McDonald.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and I'd like to start by welcoming our participants to our role play session here today, and particularly those of you who are joining us for the very first time from the Super Conference in Anaheim that we just had last weekend. It was great to see everybody and get started in the coaching program. Now, Craig and I are excited for today's webinar because what you're going to discover, as many of you already have, is that lead conversion over the phone is the part of the system that, although it requires the highest degree of skill, it's also what makes you the most money. And I know that might sound kind of odd, but it really is true. In other words, the better you are on the phone, the less leads you need to generate, which means you get more out of fewer leads if you're good on the phone. If you aren't good on the phone, you need hundreds and hundreds of leads to get anywhere. And the problem is generating hundreds and hundreds of leads is expensive. Generating fewer leads is a lot less expensive. Not only that, but being good on the phone and being able to do more with fewer leads means it's less time consuming. To follow up with 100 prospects to book one appointment is extremely time consuming. To follow up with 5 prospects to book one appointment takes a lot less time. So there's the opportunity to really make a lot of money with the system falls into how good you are on the phone converting the leads that you've generated. And that's why every Thursday for almost 2 decades now, every single Thursday, we've been doing this role play session with our coaching members. I always think of it as the equivalent of a professional golfer practicing, 3-foot putts. They never stop. It's not like they say, oh, I've got this down. They're always going to continue forever to practice and refine what they do every day over and over and over and over again, so that they can only get better at what they do over and over and over again. And that is the universal callback script. So I'm super excited for those of you that are on here for the very first time. We're going to do some role playing with you. For those of you that are on the role play session here that have already progressed with it, this is going to be review, but it's good for you. It's always good for you to get an overview of how the universal script works. The better you understand how it works, the better you'll be at using the script, the more natural the script will sound, and the more likely it is that you'll get to that mastery level. And I define that mastery level of the point where you are having a conversation with your prospect and you can barely recognize the fact that you're actually following a very systemized script because it's just such natural. It's very conversational. It just flows out of you completely naturally. That is when you've reached mastery level with the universal callback script. And so what we're going to do here this morning is we're going to break down the script. I just really want everyone to understand how it works so that you're comfortable with it. We want to get rid of any phone fear that anybody has. Remember this. When you're picking up the phone and calling a prospect, the only reason you're doing that is because they contacted you first. You're never, ever going to make a cold call. You're never going to call someone who didn't ask you for information first. Somebody who called into your hotline and hung up, you're never going to call them. Never. Someone who went onto your webpage and didn't leave any contact information, you're never, ever going to call them ever. They're not a prospect. You are only going to follow up with those prospects who have, number one, asked you for real estate information, and number two, voluntarily given up their contact information. And if they didn't do those two things, you will never, ever call them. You're only following up with real prospects. A real prospect asked for real estate information and gave up their anonymity in order to get it. That way, your mindset when you're calling these prospects back is that I'm only calling back prospects who are very, very motivated. And I know they're very motivated because of what they did. And over time, this begins to really change your mindset. You realize that when you're making cold calls and you're calling, just human beings who have done nothing to indicate a motivation to buy or sell real estate, you're not greeted with any kind of appreciation at all. However, when you're calling back prospects who have asked you for information, given up their contact details, and you've provided them with that very information that they asked for, you're going to be greeted with appreciation. And when you start to hear thank you over and over and over again from the prospects that you're calling, it begins over time to change your mindset, and you no longer have phone fear. As a matter of fact, sitting down and making 10, 15, 20 follow-up calls with prospects isn't a dreaded task, because you actually get somewhere. Why do you get somewhere? 2 reasons. 1, you're following up with motivated real prospects. Number 2, you are armed with the skills of exactly what to say to the prospect to determine their timing and motivation, and if appropriate, you know exactly what to say to book a face-to-face appointment. Something that Craig says frequently is that for most of you, if you just got face-to-face with more prospects more frequently, just that alone, you'd make a whole lot more money. So what is the purpose of this universal callback script? Well, ultimately, it's to get face-to-face with more prospects, more appropriate prospects. We don't want to get face-to-face with everybody. We want to get face-to-face with those prospects that represent, the kind of prospects that we'd like to meet with. They represent a buyer or a seller. How do we determine that? We're going to use the universal script. So here's how we're going to start off, okay? Before we do any role-playing with anybody, the way we're going to start off is by overviewing the universal script here, and it all begins with the introduction. In the introduction, it's very important that all in one breath we answer the question that the prospect is thinking, which is, who are you and why are you bothering me? And we're going to answer this in such a clever way that the prospect is actually going to appreciate our phone call. So in the beginning, the prospect's thinking, who are you and why are you bugging me? And we're going to turn that around so that instead of thinking, who are you and why are you bothering me, they're going to be thinking, oh, well, thank you for calling. Thank you for that. Now, boy, that seems like a big stretch, but we're going to make that. Here's how. Hi, Mr. Smith. It's James calling with Craig Proctor's office at Remax Omega. And the reason I'm calling is in regards to your request for a list of free distressed sales and bank foreclosure properties. And I just wanted to let you know I prepared and sent that information. I hope that's okay, Mr. Smith. Now think about what I've just done there. I have just explained exactly who I am and why I'm calling. And very carefully, I've made it clear to, in this case, Mr. Smith, that the reason I'm calling is because he requested information from me. And I'm going to be specific. You were on my website last night and you requested information on distressed sales and bank foreclosure properties. Just wanted to give you a quick call and let you know I did prepare and send that information to you. I hope that's okay, Mr. Smith. Now remember this. Mr. Smith is a prospect. On his own volition, he requested information on distressed sales and bank foreclosures. He was actively looking for real estate. He saw our ad. He read our ad. He responded to our ad. He filled out the details of what properties he was looking for, price range, area. He gave his contact information. He gave his phone number. Do you know why Mr. Smith did all of those things? Because he is a real prospect. People who aren't serious tend to not do those things. So when I say to Mr. Smith, just wanted to give you a quick courtesy call and let you know I sent the distress sales that you asked for on my website, I hope that's okay. Overwhelmingly, if you do this properly, the response that you are going to hear is one of gratitude. Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it. I want you to notice this as well. It kind of sounds like the call is over. And that was done purposefully. Okay, in other words, if the prospect feels like the reason you're calling is to simply acknowledge their request for the information and to confirm that you've sent it or that they received it or what have you, sounds like the call's over. So the prospect says, hey, great, thanks for the call. Yep, I did get that, thank you. What that allows us to do now is ask some probing questions. But I have to tell you, if you're looking at this introduction thinking it doesn't matter, You're making a big mistake. Here's the litmus test. When you call your prospects back, if they're not saying thank you or something in the realm of appreciation, then you're not following the introduction. You're not. If the prospects are hanging up on you, if the prospects are saying, I'm busy, call later, if they're doing anything other than saying thank you, it's you. You're not following the introduction as it was intended. Here's what you might be doing. Oh, hi, Mr. Smith. It's James calling with Craig Proctor's office at Remax Omega. How are you folks doing today? I'm not doing well at all. I'm in the middle of something right now. Call me back later. That's not the script. Nowhere in the script does it say, how are you today? Nowhere in the script does it say, are you having a good day? It wasn't an oversight. It's not that Craig thought, well, I would like to exchange courtesies with them, but I'm not going to do that just on a whim. It was done very strategically. If the prospect doesn't know that you're not a telemarketer, they're going to assume that you are one. And the only way that we can differentiate ourselves from a telemarketer is by immediately explaining, the reason I'm calling is because you requested information in regards to an over-the-net home evaluation on my website, and I'm letting you know that I prepared and sent that information. I hope that's okay, Mr. or Mrs. Smith. If you do not do that, you will not elicit a reaction of appreciation, and the whole thing goes downhill. We must differentiate ourselves from a telemarketer, and if you do, you'll be greeted with appreciation, which then allows us to move into phase two. And phase two is our fact-finding mission. What Craig did here is he designed questions that determine the timing and motivation of our prospect. But I want you to notice something about these questions. They were designed in a way that allows the prospect to answer and elaborate without feeling threatened. In other words, you've got to think of language and how over the phone, the words that we use paint a picture. And we don't have body language, we don't have anything else other than the words that come out of our mouth over the phone. And if we paint a threatening picture, it's very easy for the prospect over the phone to pull back. And so what Craig discovered is this: when you ask a question hypothetically, it allows the prospect to answer the question much more easily because they don't feel threatened. In other words, when I say, hey, Mr. Smith, if you were to make a move, would you be staying here locally or moving out of the area? That's a very different question than, hey, Mr. Smith, where are you moving? Hey, Mr. Smith, where are you moving infers that I think he's planning on moving. I'm a salesperson telling the prospect, hey, you're moving. I know you're moving. When are you moving? That's very threatening to the prospect. So the prospect says, no thanks, just thinking about it. They don't tell me the truth because they feel threatened. The salesperson is going to pressure them into doing something that they're not ready to do or don't want to do. So the prospect automatically pulls back. But when you word it hypothetically and say, hey, Mr. Smith, if you were to make a move, when do you think that might be? Mr. Smith, if you were to make a move, would you be staying here locally or might you be moving out of the area? It's the same question, but because of Craig's understanding of language, what it does is it paints a picture that is far threatening. And if the prospect doesn't feel threatened, guess what they're far more likely to do? Elaborate on their moving plans. And that's all we want to do. We want to determine how good the prospect is. So in asking these questions, that's what we get to the bottom of. Are you folks thinking about making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? If you were to make a move, would you stay here locally or move out of the area? Do you rent or do you currently own the home you live in right now? Do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? All of these questions, although they're not intrusive, they help us determine how serious the prospect is and what their timing looks like. And if their timing is appropriate, we will book an appointment with that prospect. Now, it's important that we book the right appointment with that prospect. If they're a buyer prospect, that doesn't mean that they don't have a home to sell. If they're a seller prospect, it doesn't mean that they might not want to find something to live in, right? So we've got to be very careful and open to letting the prospect determine the best way to convert the lead. So let me bring in Craig here to talk about this next phase, because arguably this is where you'll have the biggest challenge with the universal script until you reach that level of mastery, where you transition from asking the probing questions to making an offer to the prospect, making an offer that results in an appointment. That transition is where typically you'll have the biggest challenge, where you really have to work at this and identifying this. So let me bring Craig in here, and Craig, let's talk about that a little bit, and let's talk about first the seller offer and how the seller offer came about in offering more than just a home evaluation to prospects.
Well, first of all, good morning, James, and good morning to everyone else.
Good morning, good morning.
Okay, well, I want to back up the bus a little bit before we go into the seller offer. Understand that the questions that we're asking, and Andrea, maybe you can highlight those probing questions. The probing questions are designed, as it says there, to determine the motivation and the timing of the prospect. Now, we have a buyer side of the script and a seller side of the script, and James has talked about the intro. So if a prospect responds to one of your seller campaigns, obviously you go down the right-hand side of the script, you go down the seller follow-up. If it's a prospect that responds to a buyer campaign, maybe they want a list of distressed sales, for example, you're obviously going to go down the left side. Okay, so you'll see that the script has a left side and a right side, one for buyer prospects or one for seller prospects. Now, James has done a really good job talking about the introduction, so I'm not going to repeat that. Once we get into these probing questions, the probing questions are all about you basically interviewing the prospect, and you want to interview the prospect by asking these probing questions and carefully listen to how they answer the questions. So that makes sense, right? The reason we're asking the questions is because we want to listen to the answers. Now, you're going to learn by how the prospect answers the questions whether the prospects fit into one of three categories. Okay, so there's three different slots, we'll say, or three different boxes that you're going to slot the prospects into based on how they answer those probing questions. Okay, those 6 questions. They may answer the questions in such a way that you determine that the prospect is really motivated to buy or sell. I mean, they're ready, they're motivated, and they want to buy a home right away, or they want to list a house right away. And of course, what we want to do in that situation? We would want to make an offer to try to get in front of them, to get together with a prospect that is ready to act right now. Now, you'll notice we're asking a very important question in that situation where you've determined, hey, this is someone that wants to absolutely buy or sell. If you take a look on the right-hand side of the script at question 5, if Andrea can highlight that. Question 5, we're asking, would you prefer to buy before selling your home? Okay, this is a very important question because we want to know the answer to that. Just because the prospect responded to a seller campaign doesn't necessarily mean that they're a sell first prospect. Everybody understands that, right?
Yep.
So if I asked James, if you were my prospect, James, I said, no, James, you know, basically, do you prefer to buy your home before putting your home up for sale? Or would you prefer to get the for sale sign up on your house before you even look around? How James answers that question is going to dictate which offer I'm going to make below. And Andrea, if you could highlight the 2 offers below, James is going to answer that question, and he's going to tell me whether he's a sell first guy or a buy first guy. So James could say, well, you know, actually, I would like to look around at houses before I even consider putting my home on the market.
Yep.
Well, if James answered that way, well, I'm not going to be going into the right-hand corner and making the sell first offer. However, many of you make that mistake. And you may articulate a very good sell first offer. You could communicate a really awesome offer, but let's agree, if that's not where the prospect's head's at, your offer is going to fall on deaf ears. You might want to write this down. Even the world's greatest offer will fall on deaf ears if that's not where the prospect's head's at. I just made that up, but it's true, right? It's a good one to write down because, and that's a mistake I made earlier in my career, is I would just assume that because the prospect responded to, let's say, the online home evaluation or the area home sales report, okay, they responded to a seller campaign, therefore I should just try to get in the door to, give my listing presentation. But if that's not where the prospect's head's at, if they would rather look around at houses before they even consider putting their home on the market, if they tell me that, why do they tell me? Because I asked the question, are you a buy first guy or a sell first guy? If James says he'd rather look around at homes before he even considers putting his home on the market, I'm going to make the buy first offer. If James said, well, I wouldn't even dream of looking around and getting excited about other homes before I list my home for sale, well, knowing that information, I'm going to make the sell first offer. Now, what's the other offers that we could make? Okay, so we're going to make an offer to meet with the buyer or seller if they're ready to act. Well, the opposite of ready to act would be they don't represent a prospect at all. You ask these probing questions, and the prospect is not that motivated at all, or their timing is way off. They might say, well, I'm not going to list my home for 3 years. I'm not going to make a move for 3 years. You're probably not going to follow up with somebody like that. Okay, or how about this? They're rude to you. Their best friend or a relative is a real estate agent. So you've got my permission to not follow up with those people. What did I say at the super conference? I said far too many of you spend far too much time with buyers and sellers that you should just blow off right from the get-go. And I also said my goal for all of you is I want you to generate so many leads, you don't have to worry about prospects like that. So those prospects, we're just going to delete. We're not going to worry about following up with them. Okay, so that leaves us with one more category. So I want everyone to think about this. We've got clients that answer the probing questions in such a way we're led to believe that they're ready to act now, and we're going to make a buy offer or a sell offer. We've got clients that are not that motivated. They're rude. No matter what we do or say, they're never going to list with us. They represent no business at all. The big opportunity in the middle are the people that are going to buy or sell, but not yet. They might be 3 months out. They might be 6 months out. So how do we approach those? Well, if we go to question 6 on the right-hand side, Andrea is going to highlight that. If James answered those probing questions in such a way that I realize, well, James might be a good prospect. He's eventually going to sell his home, but he's not going to sell his house now, so there's no reason meeting with him. It might be 6 months down the road. I would say, James, would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? Now, if James said no, never call me again, then I'm going to respect that. We call this permission marketing. But in most cases, the prospect will say yes, to which you're going to say, well, when would be a good time for me to call you back? Now, it's really important that you ask that question. James, as you know, like a dummy, for years and years and years early in my career, I would ask the first question. I'd say, James, would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? And if James said yes, I would just guess. I would make a subjective decision. I would guess, well, from the way that James answered those questions, I'm just going to assume he's probably not going to do anything till such and such a time. So I would subjectively just guess and schedule a follow-up call based on my gut feeling. Well, that's really stupid, and I lost a lot of business because I would guess incorrectly. Guessing is not a very good idea. So once we ask the prospect, would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? If they say yes, the obvious next question to ask is, well, great, James, when do you think would be a good time for me to do that? When would be a good time for me to follow up with you? Now, whatever time frame they give you, I'm going to recommend that you folks always cut it in half. As James indicated earlier, they see us as salespeople, right? And who's a salesperson? A salesperson is somebody that makes me do something I don't want to do. So what quite often happens is they arbitrarily tell us a time frame that's really longer than it is. You know, so the guy that's thinking of selling his home in 6 months, or 3 months rather, tells us 6 months. So whatever time frame they tell you, cut it in half, just as insurance. You know, I've lost a lot of money in this business by calling back prospects a little bit too late. But I've never lost any money in this business by calling prospects a little bit too early. So we want to err on the side of caution. Now, I want everyone to think about this. In all the years that you've been in real estate, of 100% of all the prospects that you've ever talked to, as long as you've been doing this, which category do most of the prospects fit in? They fit in the middle category. They're not ready to buy or sell today. They're not you know, people that have a real estate agent or are never going to work with us, not using this system anyway. You're going to find that the majority of prospects you speak to are good prospects in the fact that they're going to buy or sell, but they're just not ready yet. And this is the Achilles heel that most agents have is, well, most agents don't have an automatic lead generation system like this, but even fewer realtors have an effective follow-up system. So this is where the money is. So if you haven't heard anything that James has said today, you haven't heard anything that I've said, understand that this is where the money is. Okay, that the majority of people you talk to are going to say something like this. They're going to say, yeah, I am thinking of selling, but it's going to be 3 months from now, or it's going to be 6 months from now. They may even tell you exactly why they're going to move. They're going to tell you when, and they're going to tell you why. Well, it doesn't get much better than that, right? I referred to these prospects as golden prospects. So do you guys understand what I'm saying? You follow up with the prospect, and the prospect says, yeah, we're absolutely going to be selling our home. We bought new construction. We won't be listing our home until January. So you have to do the right things between now and January, or you're probably going to lose that business. Or you speak to a lady and she says, I'm going through a marriage separation. Like, there's no doubt that we're selling the house. We are. But we're dealing with the lawyers, and this might be 3 or 4 months, this process, before we're in a position to list the home. And you talk to another guy who says, yeah, 100% I'm selling. I've been transferred. I need to be in Boston in 4 months, but the company won't let me list the home until we get into December. Okay, so those are 3 examples, real-world examples, of prospects that are open to working with you. They're upfront telling you when they're moving, why they're moving, where they're moving. You've got all that information. Wouldn't it be a shame to lose that business? So we're going to help you on these Thursday role-play follow-up calls, help you plug the hole in your bucket. Most of you have a massive hole in your bucket. And that's why you got to generate so many leads, because your follow-up and conversion is not very effective. So that's the idea behind the probing questions. We're basically interviewing the prospects that have called you on their own volition. As James says, normal people don't do this, right? The information we offer is only of interest to real prospects. And for those of you that have phone phobia, I get it. If you've been in a Mike Ferry program and you're cold calling, you're a sweat hog, I understand how even looking at the telephone could be a huge turnoff. And if you've done any of that stuff, understand using our programs like a walk in the park. You're not cold calling. You're not initiating any contact with these prospects. You're simply returning an inquiry that the prospects made of you. And the prospect has to jump all through these hoops to get to you. They have to see the ad. They have to respond to the ad. They have to visit the website or go to the hotline. They have to leave all their contact information. And you're simply calling them back saying, hey, I'm doing what you wanted me to do. I'm following up on your inquiry. And then you go right into the probing questions and you determine, okay, is this a now prospect? Is this a future prospect? Or is this no business at all? It's that simple. if they are a prospect that wants to act now, let's talk about the offers. Now, I want you to think about this. If we make a bad offer, okay, if our offer, the words that come out of our mouth, if they're crummy words, even a prospect that's motivated to buy or sell will probably say no. And that's happened to many of you before, where really good prospects seem not to be that motivated because, frankly, the words that come out of your mouth are not that motivating. So they say no to you. You don't get to meet with them, and you see, in a week, they've listed their home with somebody else. So it seems to me that if we want to compel buyers and sellers to meet with us, and I use the word compel purposely because you can't force a buyer or seller to meet with you, right? You can't make them meet with you. So all you've got as a realtor are the words that come out of your mouth. The better the words are, the more appointments you're going to get. So we're going to show you the ultimate offers to make buyers and sellers. Well, let's talk about that, James. Let's talk about what are the ultimate offers. What is it that every buyer in the world wants? I've been doing this for 25 years.
A great deal.
A great deal. Would everyone agree with that? I have never in 25 years had anyone call me up and say, hey, Craig, I see you've got a list of distress sales and fixer-uppers and great deals. Hey, I'm the opposite kind of buyer. I'm actually looking for a list of bad deals. Do you have a list of overpriced properties or perhaps homes that are stale on the market and haven't sold?
Properties that have been overlooked by all the other buyers because they're just not very attractive.
Right. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so, we're being sarcastic here. But look, what buyers want are houses. And what buyers understand is to get a good deal on these houses, they have to be Johnny on the spot. So if you take a look at our offer, and we're going to go through this word for word with you, this buy first offer, what we're offering buyers, and you might want to write this down, is we're offering them what they perceive to be proprietary information. Proprietary information. I hope everyone's got their pen out. Write that down. Proprietary information. And we're offering priority access to this proprietary information. Okay, so here's what we're not saying to buyers. James, I'd like you to be my buyer. Hey, James, look, I could get you a list of all the same homes you could get anywhere else, and I'm going to send them to you after the fact. Would you be interested in that?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. So, by the way, that's what the buyers think of real estate agents, right? You know that, right? They think that the same information they can get from you, they can just get online themselves. Why do I need a real estate agent? I can just go online. Like if you were to ask a poll buyers, that's what they'd say. Well, if you said to a buyer, how do I get information on houses? They'd say, well, you go online. That's how you find houses. They don't say you go to a real estate agent. Okay, so they want, we're going to do a very good job of communicating to all the buyers we speak to that we have what they want. We have proprietary information. We have difficult to find homes, and we're going to give them priority access. We're going to get the information to them faster. Why? So they can beat out other buyers to all these great buys. Now, you may say, well, yeah, every buyer would want that. Why wouldn't a buyer want it? Well, a buyer might still not want that great offer if they fear cost or obligation. So that's why we're going to keep reminding the prospect, guess what? Getting the proprietary information and getting priority access on the hot deals is free of charge. It will never cost you a penny, and you're never obligated to buy a home. Okay, so now let's do a role play, James, of the actual offer. Okay, that's the theory behind it. Let's show you what it sounds like. So James, in this example, he's responded to a buyer campaign. I've done the introduction. I've asked the probing questions, and I determined, hey, you know what? Sounds like, by the way James answered these questions, that he's like ready to go look at homes and buy something. So James is somebody I'd like to meet with. So I would say, James, would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your home buying criteria from all the real estate companies? Okay, my list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and other distress sales. It's a free service, and of course, you're never obligated to buy a home. Do you think that would interest you?
Sure, but is that any different from what I'm getting from another agent?
Beautiful. Okay, so James has given us what we know is an objection. Now, what you're going to find is there's only about 8 or 9 objections you're going to get. Here's the question. Would all of you feel a lot more confident on the phone if you knew what those objections were and James and I were to teach you how to handle them? So this is a very common sense objection, right? James is saying, well, I'm already getting information. In fact, James might say, you know, Craig, I already have a realtor emailing me properties, so I think I'm good. Now, here's how I'm going to handle this. James, I'm not sure where you're getting your information, or I'm not sure what information the other realtor is sending you, but my list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and other distress sales. Would you like to get information on those as well? So let's stop there for a minute. I'm not saying to James, hey, don't go online and search. I'm not saying to James, hey, stop getting the information from the other realtors. What I am doing, though, is I'm creating massive doubt. The biggest fear that every buyer has is that they're going to miss out on the perfect home. So my offer to James is, hey, James, I'm not sure what the other realtors are sending you, but my list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and distress. Would you like to get information on those as well? Well, here's what the buyer says. Well, gee, I don't know what the other agent's sending me. I think I'm getting them all, but Craig's willing to send me his list of homes too, and it's free of obligation. You know, it's free of charge. There's no obligation. So what happens is the buyer says yes, and that's what we want to do. We want to get the buyer to say, yes, I would like to get that information. I want to get your list too. Okay, now that you get the buyer to say yes, this is when we're going to come back with commitment. Not until they say yes. So imagine James is backed into the corner now. I've offered him the free list of homes. It sounds pretty delicious. And James, like most of the buyers, says, yes, I want that. That's when I come back with, well, James, when can we get together for about 20 minutes or so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? Now, James, I'd like you to try to fight me on that.
Well, Craig, you know, I did go onto your website and I filled out all that information. If you take a look there, you'll have everything that you're looking for.
Okay, so would everyone agree that that's a very common sense objection that the buyers would likely have? They might say, hey, I already went onto your website and I filled out all the information. Or they might say, hey, why do we need to meet? I can tell you right now what I'm looking for. Or they might say, I could email you my criteria. Okay, so here's how we're going to handle this. I'm going to say, well, James, I want to do a good job for you. Rather than me emailing you hundreds of homes which may or may not match your criteria, or even worse, risking out missing out on the perfect home, if we can get together for about 20 minutes, I can take down exactly what you're looking for. You know, I want to have the same great understanding that you have. A good time for us to meet, days or evenings? Try to fight me again, James.
You know what? Probably evenings, but I better talk to my wife first. I'm not sure what her schedule looks like, so can I give you a call back when I talk to my wife?
Perfect. Okay, so I'm saying perfect just because this is what we hear, and I'm going to show you how to perfectly handle this. But this is a very common objection. In fact, all of you folks that are married, you know you've used this before. Hey, you know, I'd love to meet with you, but I've got to speak to my husband or wife. Everyone who's married loves it. It's one of the best parts about being married. You can always say, use this as an excuse. I got to talk to my wife or my husband. Okay, so another excuse they might give is I need to check my work schedule. So here's how we're going to handle this. Now, we've got to give James the benefit of the doubt because maybe he really does need to check his schedule with his wife before he agrees to meet with me. Or maybe James actually does need to check his work schedule before he sets a time to meet with me. So I'm going to give James the benefit of the doubt, and I am going to respond with what I believe is a reasonable solution to this problem. James is saying, hey, Craig, I would love to meet with you, but I got to check with my wife. So I come back with this. Well, James, why don't we do this? Why don't we at least set up a tentative time to meet? And if after you speak with your wife that time doesn't work, just give me a call back and we can change the time. But if I don't hear from you, I'll see you Thursday night at 7. How does that sound?
Yeah,
now,
that sounds fine.
Okay, well, if James is actually sincere about meeting me, that is a reasonable solution to this problem. However, if James was just using his wife as an excuse to not meet with me, we're going to find that when I've handled this objection with a reasonable solution, James will immediately invent yet another reason why he can't meet with me. He'll invent another objection. And you'll hear the prospect say something like this. Well, gee, I don't know if we're quite ready to meet with a realtor yet. Or I don't know if we're quite ready for this yet. How about I got your contact information, Craig. How about I call you back when we're ready? That's a bad sign. Okay? Is the prospect's going to keep inventing objections because they're really not sincere about meeting with us at all. Now, the harder the prospect fights us, the more we don't want the prospect. Okay, what did I say all the way through the conference on the weekend? I said we want to generate slightly more buyers and sellers than we could possibly handle. And if that was true for you, if you had more buyers and sellers that you could handle, who would you choose to work with? Well, you would choose to work with the most motivated, the most sincere, the most ready-to-act buyers and sellers, prospects that will do things your way, and you would reject the prospects that fight you. The more they resist, the more you don't want them. So when they really fight you, or they're rude to you, or they're simply not motivated, or their timing's way off in the future, the answer is thanks and have a nice day. Now, James and I want you to convert as many as possible. So we're going to work with you on that offer to make you really, really good at the offer so buyers and sellers want to meet with you. You don't have to be an arm twister. They're actually compelled by the words that come out of your mouth to want to meet with you. They don't see you as a commodity. They don't see you as just offering what they can get on their own from the internet or what they can just get from any real estate agent. Now, let's go back to the seller offer. Let's say when I asked James that important question, in the probing questions, we asked that important question, James, would you prefer to buy first or sell first? Let's say in this example, James says, well, I would want to sell first. I wouldn't even dream of running around looking at homes and before I got my home sold. I want to sell my home first. Well, we're not going to talk about looking around at properties or emailing James properties. No way. In this example, we're going to go straight to the sell first offer, and Andrea is going to highlight that now. Now, we can't have a lame offer. If your offer to sellers is, hey, would you like to get an evaluation of what your home would sell for? That's a very weak offer. And don't be surprised when most sellers say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I already know what my house is worth. And it is true today that many of the sellers know more about what's going on in their neighborhood than we do. So if that's your big offer here in 2015 to sellers, hey, we can give you a computerized analysis or a free market evaluation, that's a pretty weak offer. What you're going to find when you've got a weak offer is that offer is rejected. Okay? It doesn't compel sellers to want to meet with you at all. So what we need to do is we need to have an offer that's wider than that. We need to offer a seller so many things that they see value in meeting with us. So this is what the offer looks like. I'd say, James, would you like a free evaluation to determine what your home would sell for all in one breath? Also, I can give you tips on what to do, what not to do to sell your home for sale for the most amount of money. And we can go over all the various closing costs you'll incur so you'll know exactly what you're going to have left in your pocket after all expenses. It's a free of charge and obligates you to nothing. Would that sound helpful? You know, when would be a good time to meet, days or evenings? So let's have a look at all the things we're offering the seller. We're offering them an accurate assessment of what their home is worth. We're offering to give them information on what to do and what not to do to sell their home for the most amount of money. And what I love about that one, folks, is it does require an in-home visit. It's pretty difficult to give someone advice on what to do and what not to do to prepare their home for sale if you don't look at their house, right? So this is going to help you get in front of them at their kitchen table. Also, they're always asking us about our fees and the net sheet, so we're going to go through that. Most of you do that now. You might even want to throw in this. If they're buying and selling, you might even want to say, and we can also talk about timing and when's a good time to do this, and answer any other questions that you have. So let me do the offer right from the top. I'm going to ad-lib it a bit, but this is what it should sound like. James, would you like a free evaluation to determine what your home would sell for? Also, I can give you some tips on what to do and what not to do to sell your home for money. We could go over all the various closing costs you're going to incur, so you're going to know exactly what you're going to net in your pocket after all the expenses. We could talk about timing and when's a good time for you to do this, and answer any of the questions that you have. It's meeting with me is free of charge, and you're never obligated to do anything. Does that sound like it might be helpful? Great. When's a good time to meet, days or evenings?
Yeah, evenings is good.
Right. Okay. So I think what we ought to do now is take some questions. And James, while I'm looking at the questions, maybe there's something you want to add to this.
You know what? I mean, really, what we should do is demonstrate with a role play. I think that would be great with one of our students who's pretty good with the script, and I know we'll probably get many volunteers. But there are many.
We have a volunteer actually. This is Ernest. Okay, now let me introduce Ernest. Ernest is with Exit Realty from Tampa, Florida. Now Ernest started in the program in March. Okay, so Ernest has been in the coaching program for right around 6 months. And he's been a great student. So do you want to go to Ernest first?
Sure.
Let's do that. So Ernest, let's do a role play with you.
Good morning, Craig and James. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Ernest, maybe you can share with all of our new coaching members how important it is to get this part of the program right.
It's very important because if you don't get the script down, then you're going to have people that are going to blow you off on the phone, and they'll say, yes, I'll meet with you, and then, you know, when you set up your appointment, you sit in your office and nobody shows up. You really got to work on the script. And I'm still getting the script down better and better each time, but it's critical to get the script memorized and down pat.
So would it be a fair statement to say if you're not really good with the script, what happens is you don't convert the leads, so it appears that the leads aren't good, but all of a sudden when you get good with the scripts, these leads that you didn't think were very good all of a sudden become very good. So you know, what becomes clear is it never was the leads. It was the skill of the person on the phone.
Very true.
Okay, so I'm going to have you role play with James. James is going to be the prospect, and what type of prospect would you like him to be?
A Z buyer lead, a buyer lead.
Okay, let's just say he's a buyer lead. So the point is, it really doesn't matter what the buyer is requesting, whether it's a list of distressed sales or a list of first-time buyer homes, or it might be a list of homes in a certain neighborhood in Tampa, Florida, in a certain price range. It really doesn't matter what they're asking for. The process is the same, and of course that's why we call this a universal callback script. So, so we're going to do the role play here. The phone rings, ring, ring. So Ernest, take it away.
Okay. Is James there, please?
Yeah, this is James.
James, this is Ernest Van Galan from Exit Prime Realty, and the reason I'm calling is I received your request for a distressed property list, and I'm putting that list together for you, and I'm putting it in the mail for you. Is that okay?
Yeah. What list was that again?
It was a list of distressed properties, foreclosures, and good deals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you folks looking to make a move in the next 3 to 6 months?
Oh, we're just thinking about it.
Okay. And are you currently renting, or do you own your own home at this time?
We're renting right now.
Okay. And are you planning on staying in the area, or are you looking to move outside this area?
We've got a couple neighborhoods that we really like. It's going to be nearby. We don't want to go too far away. My wife and I both work in the area. But we haven't pinned it down yet, and we're just looking around.
Okay. And if you were to move, when do you think that might be?
Well, probably, as you say, maybe a little more than 3 months, but we'd like to see ourselves, do something before the end of the year.
Okay, and do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right?
We've got a couple realtors that have sent us some properties. One we met at an open house. So yeah, we do know some realtors.
And are you committed 100% to any one of those realtors?
No, we're not committed yet. We're not that far in the process.
Okay. James, would you like me to email you daily updates of homes that fit your home buying criteria? These are from all the real estate companies, and our list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, distressed sales, even some for sale by owners. It is a free service, and of course, you're never obligated to buy a home. Would that be of interest to you, James?
Yeah, I am getting properties from other, as I said, some of those other realtors. So, I mean, I don't know. Are these properties any different? I'm looking at what you sent me here, and not sure if these really are, what I'm looking for. Some of them I've seen before.
Okay, James, I don't know what the other realtors have sent you, but our list does include hard-to-find deals, for sale by owners, closeouts, and things of that nature. Would that be of interest to you?
Yeah.
Okay. James, when can we get together for about 20 minutes so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? Excuse me. Exactly what you're looking for. Like I said, it only takes 20 minutes, and when do you think would be a good time to get together? Days or evenings?
Probably evenings would be best. I better talk to my wife first, but it'll probably be evenings.
Okay, and what would work better for you, 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock?
Probably 7 o'clock. But again, I better check with my wife and make sure that she's available.
All right. How about we do this, James? Since I know you get busy, we can book that appointment for Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and if it doesn't work out, just let me know. We can reschedule for a time that you and your wife can be together. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah, I'll take down your number and you got mine. But that's fine.
Thank you, James. I look forward.
Do I need to bring anything or anything like that, or?
No, just yourself and your wife. That's all you need to bring.
Perfect.
Thank you, James.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks.
So I threw out some objections there, which were well handled. But I want, particularly those of you who are new, to see how good you can get. I mean, Ernie's pretty good at this. And you can see how there's nothing that catches Ernie by surprise because he's heard it all before. And so all you're doing is you're just using a very logical approach. This is your situation. This is what would be helpful for you. There's no, threat of cost or obligation. And once you're armed with that, what you'll find is this. Objections become more and more rare the better you are with the script. So at first, when you're not as good, you'll get all kinds of objections. But as you get better and better at explaining what you're offering, you'll find that the objections become less and less frequent. So that was a great job, Ernie. I do appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, Ernie, I'm glad you're having great success, and thanks for role-playing with us here today.
No problem, Craig and James. Thank you.
Okay, we have some really good questions here. So I'm going to read some of the questions, and then we'll take some audio questions as well. So if you want, you've got two options, right? You can type in your questions into the chat, or you can raise your hands. And Andrea, maybe just remind everybody how they can raise their hand and ask an audio question. However, if you're going to ask an audio question, you need to make sure that you've got a working microphone on your computer.
That's correct. Either a working microphone or what we really like on the telephone for the best clarity. But to ask a question, you can raise your hand, or to role play, there's going to be a little yellow or orange hand at the top of your webinar control panel in your desktop or your device. You just click that with your mouse, and then I see your hand raised. You can also type, "I would like to role play," or "I volunteer," in the chat box.
Okay, I've got a couple of people asking, is this live? So I'm not sure how to pronounce your name here. Afshin, is it live? Yes, this is absolutely live. Okay. Here's a question for James. Joseph is asking this question. James, how do I handle a prospect that leaves their email address only but a bad phone number? And Dominic actually is sort of asking the same question here. He says, if you get a lead with a wrong phone number, do you look up the phone number and call it? Yeah, why not? Just go to 411.com.
Right, you can do that. But another thing is as well is that, you know, you can always, if you only have an email, you can always email them a link right back to the landing page and tell them to accurately include all detailed information in order to receive the report.
Okay, so sometimes they give you an incorrect phone number on purpose. Sometimes it's by mistake. But if I have their name and I have their address, then I can use a crisscross directory to hopefully find a home number for them. So you can try to do that. Okay, Dominic's asking this. Okay, so on the first phone call, you use this script, but what about on subsequent phone calls? So James, if I was to talk to you today and you indicated that you're not going to do anything for a couple months, say 2 months, what we're teaching our members today is always call them back in half the time. So if you said you won't be buying or selling for a couple months, I'm going to call you back in 30 days. What do I say? Well, I'm basically taking them through the script again with a very slight modification to the intro. Okay, I would say this. Hey, James, it's Craig Proctor with ABC Realty. And the reason I was calling is you may remember I talked to you about a month ago, and I just wanted to follow up and see if you folks had any more moving plans. And then I'm going to go through the same probing questions. Why? Because I want to make sure, I want to requalify them and make sure nothing's changed with their motivation and timing. So again, that's why we call it a universal callback script. Now, let's say that I'm calling them back 2 days later. Well, of course, I'm not going to ask all the same questions. But if it's a month or 2 months, things could have changed, right? So I'm going to take them through those same qualifying questions again. Let's have a look at our next question here. This is from Mitzi. If we have used the website in a special report as the intro, the website sends it out automatically. So should we be asking them if they received the special report, or do we say, you know, we're sending it? What language do we use? Now, also, this is important to note. Sometimes the prospects are going to be going to your hotline, right? They'll be visiting your hotline and leave a message there. Sometimes we'll be driving them to the landing page. If we drive them to the landing page, you can have the Success website set up so it's an autoresponder. As soon as they, well, actually, as soon as they put their information in, they get to see the report right away. Okay, you can turn that on and off. If you wish, you could turn that off, and you could still email or mail the report out manually. If it's a hotline lead, of course, you're not going to have their email address, right? You're only going to have their mailing address, because why would someone leave their email address when you're telling them you're going to be mailing the information out? So when you're following up with the prospect, you might want to use language like, hey, James, it's Craig Proctor with ABC Realty. I received your request for the whatever, costly home seller mistakes, whatever it was, and I just wanted to let you know I sent the information out to you. And that covers all your bases, right? That way you don't have to worry about, well, did my assistant email the information, or did she mail the information, or have they already seen the information? It covers everything. So I would just say, just want to let you know I've sent the information out. Is that okay? Now, remember, we're not calling them to talk about the information. We don't want to talk about this special report on mistakes to avoid or tips to implement to sell your home for the most amount of money. This is simply the reason or excuse we're giving the prospect as to why we're calling them, right? And it's a good reason or excuse to call them is, hey, just wanted to let you know that we received your request for the whatever and that we've sent the information out to you. And by the way, are you folks planning on making a move in the next little while? Now, if they're not planning on making a move, right, well, we really don't care about whether they understand the 9 steps to sell their home for the most amount of money, right? Because they don't represent a prospect to us. So we're not calling to get caught up on the information we sent them. That's not the purpose of the call. Remember, the purpose of the call, 2 things, to determine motivation and timing. Okay, okay, Rachel's asking this. I guess maybe we omitted this. Rachel says, good morning. Do we have these scripts in the coaching book? Yes, you do, but it's on the coaching website. And Andrea is going to show everybody again where to find the universal callback script on the coaching website. The coaching website has all of your resources, from the script to the ads to the special reports to everything that you need in this program. It's all right there. We recommend, by the way, that you print out the script. Okay, see where it says download script in English? Okay, if Andrea clicks on that, okay, you can print out that script. She's doing it right now. Okay, and you're going to print out several copies of this. Okay, we want you to have a copy posted above wherever it is you make your phone calls. You're at your office, at your home office, whatever it is. Have one in your briefcase. Always have this universal callback script. It's like an American Express card. Never leave home without it. Okay. Okay, Dottie's asking a good question here. She says, what is the procedure for distance buyers? Okay, now I did cover this at the Super Conference, but let's talk about it again. Let's say that I'm in Southern California and my buyers are coming from Canada, okay, and they want to buy a second home. And this happens, a lot of you sell resort properties. So what it's going to come down to, Dottie, is this. If the buyer was coming to your marketplace in the next couple weeks, then you're just going to set the appointment up at your office like you normally do. And you're going to do the buyer presentation there just like we talked about. If the buyer says, well, actually, I'm not coming to your marketplace for 5 or 6 months, then what we're going to teach you to do is do the buyer presentation over the phone using a webinar, just like we're doing right now. Okay, we're forced to do it that way, right? And it's better if we could get together with them, but we'll introduce you to our coaching members that have learned how to sign up long-distance buyers, because you have no choice. If you sell a lot of resort property, these are second home buyers, and they're in other states or other countries, then you've got to learn how to do your buyer presentation and get a commitment by doing all this over the phone via a webinar. Okay, let's keep moving with the questions. We love those. We'll go to a few audio questions here in a minute. Okay, Satish Patel is asking this question. Hi, Craig. One of the clients left a message asking for report number 2. Like, what is report number 2? Look, guys, there is only one report. Remember, we talked at the Super Conference about how the landing pages in the hotline are designed not just to answer all the prospect inquiries, but to help us sift and sort the prospects into 2 piles. Those that are most motivated and those that are either less motivated or less qualified. So there's only one report. So you're going to send, if it's report number 2, you're going to send out that report, whether it's report number 1 or 2. So yeah, that's the report right there. And you're just going to send it out. Now, if sometimes it gets tricky because they ask for report number 1 and 2. So if it's a seller, you can just pick 2 of our reports that would resonate with the seller and send out 2 reports. Okay, Mitzi's saying, so when they say 6 months, that means you're going to call them back in 3 months. Yes, and you're going to use that script. You use the same script, Mitzi, but you're going to say, I would say this, hey, Mitzi, Craig Proctor here with ABC Realty. I talked to you about 3 months ago, and just wanted to follow up to see if you still had some moving plans. And you go right through those qualifying questions. Okay, you might even want to say, I'm the person that sent you the special report on this or the list of fixer-uppers, and just wanted to follow up and see if you still had any moving plans. Okay, Arlene is asking this. Well, what happens if a prospect says they're not interested in you and then they return to the website? Well, look, at what you want to determine, Arlene, is that they're not interested in buying or selling, or they're just not interested in you. Because, if they're still interested in buying or selling, you should follow up with them again. But if they say, well, yeah, we are, in fact, interested in buying or selling, but we're never going to use you, then you don't have to worry about calling them back anymore. Okay. Mitzi says, if you're going to have a team member going up in the appointment, what do you say then? How do you make that appointment? What we're going to do in that case, Mitzi, is I wouldn't be saying, hey, Mitzi, I will see you tomorrow night. I'm going to say we. I'm going to use we or us. So we're going to see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And we're going to teach our team members, they're going to call themselves our selling partners. They must never apologize when they get to the house. That would be the worst thing. Oh, hey, I'm Mr. Seller. I'm Craig. I apologize that Mitzi couldn't be here tonight. What am I really saying? I'm not as good as Mitzi. I'm sort of like, her underling. And Mitzi's sorry that she couldn't be here tonight, so you're stuck with me. No, you never want to do that. My selling partners are given language like, hi, my name is James, and I'm Craig Proctor's selling partner. How you doing this evening? You never apologize. If your team members can't handle that, if they can't handle that for you, they're useless to you. So we teach you the right language and teach them the right language. Dottie's asking, when we encounter an uncooperative lead, how do we end the call? Well, I think we have to find a polite way to do it, preferably, right? So you might want to say, well, it sounds like in your situation that perhaps we're not a great fit. That's all. We're just not a great fit. Or, it sounds like you already have a relationship with an agent, so I'm going to respect that and, see you later. So you'll find a way. Believe me, you'll find a way to politely get off the phone. Okay, now here's a really big question. I am going to defer to James McDonald for this question. James, a lot of our members are asking questions about the list and the information they sent out. They're bent out of shape about, well, gee, it's one thing for James and Craig to infer that we've got this proprietary information, but I don't want to lie to people. Like, where the heck am I going to get this list? Like, isn't it true that all I'm going to be sending them is the same old stuff that all the other agents are sending? James, maybe you can talk to us about how all of us really do have an opportunity to truthfully differentiate ourselves from all the other realtors by having a proprietary list of information.
Yeah, remember this, first of all. There is no dictionary definition of what a distress sale is. Here's what we know. There are properties that you might have access to that, number one, other realtors may not have access to yet. Number two, you have access to properties that the public may find difficult to find elsewhere. So let me give you an example of those two things. First of all, are there other realtors in your office who from time to time might have a property that they have listed but is not yet on the MLS? Does that happen from time to time? Well, yes, it does. So if you communicate well with your colleagues, you will be aware from time to time of these properties that are coming on the market but have yet to come on the market. So that's number one. Those are very, very valuable, and they would be a great example of how you can have proprietary access and priority access to these kinds of properties. What about bank foreclosures? What about a relationship with different lending institutions that can let you know about properties that are in pre-foreclosure, for example? What about vacant properties? What about properties that are under lease, but you know that when the lease comes up, the owner, the absentee owner, is going to be selling? Right? You may not have those properties, but other realtors in your marketplace that you have relationships do. The bottom line is this: there are all kinds of properties that we could define as distress sales or special deals. The perception that the consumer has, that the prospect has, is that they want to know about those properties because they're great deals. Now here's what happens though. The them purchasing one of those properties is very slight. Not because they might not be a good deal, but because there aren't very many of them. What there are very many of are properties on MLS that come on the market every single day from all different real estate companies. But we have to offer value in order to make this relationship in the first place. So we're not tricking anybody. We're going to actively build this list of properties. We're always going to have our nets out, and we're going to be gathering these different types of properties so that we can accommodate the buyers and send them what we tell them we will.
Well, James, I've heard you say this to members before. So for example, one of the things that we might say to a buyer is, and my list includes properties that aren't even listed, they're not even on MLS. And of course, our members get bent out of shape. Well, how would I do that? How would I provide a list of, how would I provide homes that aren't even on the market? And I've heard you say this, James. Well, do you work at an office where there's other realtors?
Right.
Well, yeah. Do the other realtors ever come in and say, hey, I listed this great property today, and it's, it's not on MLS yet. So is that a promise that all of you could keep? Do you work in an office where other agents get new listings, or you get new listings, and they're not on MLS? And if one of your buddies at the office brought in a listing that was a real fantastic listing, and you had a buyer for that, would you not get that information out to that buyer you're working with before it even got into MLS? The answer would be yes. Well, then you can say that you have access to proprietary information. Sometimes you have access to properties that aren't even on MLS yet. But if you're on my list, and as soon as I see a home that's a match for you, whether it's just been listed on MLS or even before it's on MLS, maybe it's a home that's expired off the market, it's a seller you're talking to, and they're thinking of putting their home, maybe you have a relationship with a new home builder. Maybe it's people you've been talking to for the last couple of months that are about to list their home. So all of you can honestly say that you could access information on homes that aren't even on MLS yet. Remember, the biggest fear that we're playing on, that every buyer has, is they don't want to miss out on the perfect home. So we need you all to feel good about the fact that you can, every single one of you, provide priority access to proprietary information. All of you can get a list of foreclosures. I've got a few of you asking, well, where do I get a list of foreclosures? Well, I know here in Toronto, where I'm from, it'll say under the owner of the home, it'll say the name of the bank. If it says the Toronto Dominion Bank or the Bank of Montreal or the Canadian Imperial, CIBC or the Royal Bank of Canada, we know that that thing's bank owned. Okay, how about fixer-uppers? People say, well, where do I get a list of fixer-uppers? Well, if I do a search on MLS, I could search all the homes that are vacant. They're probably fixer-uppers. Or how about this? All the homes in certain neighborhoods or in certain price ranges. Remember, it's your list. There is no fixer-upper police. Okay, no one's going to come and get you and say, well, gee, James, you have these 16 properties on your fixer-upper list, and we only believe that 14 are actual fixer-uppers. 2 of them we don't believe are really fixer-uppers, so you're going to go to real estate jail. That's not going to happen. We need to start paying attention to whatever we're advertising. Here's what I would do. This is what I did do. I would check the hot sheets every day. If I'm offering a list of foreclosures, I would be looking for any bank-owned properties, and eventually I had my assistant do that. I said, Cindy, check the hot sheets every day. Any bank foreclosures, I want you to print them out and stick them in this file. Okay? Anything that you deem to be a fixer-upper in this price range or in this neighborhood, I want you to print them out and stick them in this file. Okay? It might be a list of luxury homes. Okay? So don't worry about the list. We're going to show you how to create the list. Now, I'm going to give you guys, got to break some more news to you. They're never going to buy one of the houses on the list that you send them anyway. So, don't get all, worked up about the list. Okay, just like, how they never buy the house they call off. Right now, you've got listings, right? You've been advertising those listings. Have you noticed how they hardly ever buy the home they call you about? Well, it's going to be the same deal here. The list of homes that we offer in the ad is what we use to compel the buyer to call you, but you don't have to worry about knocking yourself out with the list, because I'm just going to tell you in 20 years, they hardly ever buy one of the homes on the list. What happens is you get together with them at your office or at their home, you meet with them, you present the VIP buyer presentation, you sign them to a 1-year exclusive buyer agency agreement, and guess what happens? You sell them something. And the something you sell them probably won't even be one of your listings. It probably won't even be one of your company listings. It'll be something on MLS. But you never would have sold them that home on MLS had you not run the ad in the first place, offering the list of whatever: fixer-uppers, bank foreclosures, luxury homes, homes in Glenway Estates. It's that wide offer that casts a big net that compels buyers to call you in the first place. Okay, so hopefully we have so many great questions here, by the way. And the way this works is the more we get into this, the more questions you're going to have. And don't worry, that's why we do these calls every single Thursday. So you can just, just program your contact management system, your daytime, or whatever you use. This is a recurring activity every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. Okay, so we're going to keep at this until everyone understands this. Okay, let's see, where do I go next? Okay, people are asking about the monthly newsletter. Yes, you're going to send a monthly newsletter if they represent future business. You'll see that that's a question there in the bottom right-hand corner, Andrea. Maybe you can highlight that. So I asked them, would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time? See question number 6. And if they say yes, then I say, well, when would be a good time for me to give you a call back? And then whatever time frame they call me, I'm going to schedule that for half the time they tell me as a call back in my contact management system. And then I say, would you also like to receive my monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? Okay, because I want to have my face in front of these people. So that's what we're going to offer. That's sort of the basic follow-up plan. Okay, we've got some other really good questions here. Hang on, where's the one I was looking at? James, you go ahead for a second. I want to find this question.
All right. What have we got?
Well, James, what I was going to say, we don't have a lot of time left, so why don't we talk about tomorrow's ad clinic real quickly?
That is a great idea. Yeah. Now, normally what we do on the ad clinic, normally what we do on these role play sessions, we're going to role play with you. Okay, so we're going to practice. You're going to volunteer. We're going to role play with you, and you're going to learn a lot from listening to others and from volunteering yourself. On the ad clinic sessions we do every Friday, you're going to send in your ads every week. We're going to look at all of the ads that are submitted, and we're all going to look at them together, and very quickly, you're going to become an expert at lead generation. Tomorrow, though, because this is your very first ad clinic session, we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to look at some really good examples of ads that have already been submitted to us. So for many of you, you haven't even run your first ad yet, and you're in the process of doing that. By the following Friday, you'll have done that, and we can start looking at your ads. But for tomorrow, you need to be there. You need to participate. We do these webinars live every single time we do them. So someone asked, is this role play live? Well, yes. Does it sound live? Well, I guess you wouldn't know that, but yes, it is. And we do the ad clinics live as well. So you need to participate live, and the more you do, the quicker you'll learn the different rules to observe when running the different marketing campaigns, where you're running them, what you're running, there are rules attached to all of it. And once you understand the rules, you'll be able to run the perfect ad every time to maximize the response for the cheapest dollar amount possible. And that's what we're going to begin with on tomorrow's ad clinic session. But we're actually going to look at examples that have been sent in to us, in the past from our students just like you.
Okay. I found the question that I really want to answer. And this is a great question. And I don't know if anyone else noticed this other than Lewis. Okay, so Lewis, he's saying, wait a minute. Can you flash the script back up there for a second, Andrea? Okay, so Lewis looks at this and he says, hang on a second. Isn't this a little bit redundant? So Lewis says, look at this. Question number 1 on the left side for buyers. He goes, like Craig and James, you're asking, we're asking the prospect, a buyer prospect in this case, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? And then you go down to question number 4, and you're basically asking them the same question again. Well, if you were to move, when do you think that might be? And in fact, Lewis, I don't know if you noticed on the buyer side, but if we go over to the buyer side, question 1 and 3 are the same, pretty much, right? Question 1, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? And then the second question is, if you were to move, would you be staying in the area? And then we come right back and we ask what appears to you and I to be the same question. And when do you think that might be? So Lewis says, well, like, isn't that a bit of a turnoff? Like they've already answered the question once. Okay, so is everyone wondering why we purposely ask pretty much the same question? Because they answer the question differently quite often the second time you answer it.
Craig, I'd love to answer the question by giving a great example.
Okay, so I'm going to give an analogy that has nothing to do with real estate. My wife, as you know, James, is very good at this. Okay, she'll say, Craig, where were you last night? Oh, I was at the hockey game. Okay, so you played hockey. So what time did that get over? It was over at 9 o'clock. It was over at 9 o'clock. Okay. So then she'll ask me another question, and then she'll come back to, well, if it was over at 9 o'clock, how come you didn't get home till 11? So the thing is I might have gone out and had a couple beers after the hockey game, and maybe, you know, she's trying to get at that, right? So she's very good at asking a question, asking me another question, and then coming back and kind of cross-examining me. That's what they do in a court of law, right? They'll cross-examine you. So my wife she's very good at cross-examining me, and she catches me up on these things, right? It's like, okay, the hockey game was over at 9. You didn't get home till 11. What's the deal with that? Now, in the court of law, they do this, right? They ask you a bunch of questions, and then they'll ask you something else, and then they come back and they say, but I thought you said this. So give us an example of how this relates in real estate, where we might ask them a question, and then we ask them something else, and then we're pretty much coming back and asking the same question, but they give us a different answer.
Yeah. Here's I think an example where all of us can relate to. I walk into the shoe store, and the salesperson says, "May I help you?" And as a knee-jerk reaction, I just say to them, "No thanks, just looking." Now, I then proceed to go into the shoe store, and I look around at some shoes, and 20 minutes later, I'm at the counter buying a pair of shoes. Even though I said to the salesperson, "No thanks, I'm just looking," my intentions were actually to buy shoes, but I didn't want to tell them that because then they'd pressure me, and I just wanted to look around. Okay, but what if the salesperson had said this, "May I help you?" And I say, "No thanks, just looking." And then they say, "Well, are you looking for shoes, casual shoes or formal shoes?" Now I stop and I say, "Well, I'm actually looking for formal shoes." And they say, "Oh, are you looking for loafers or lace-ups?" And I say, "Well, I already have a pair of loafers. I'm looking for a pair of lace-ups." And they bring me over to the lace-up formal shoes. And now all of a sudden, I went from "no thanks, just looking" to I'm now working with that salesperson and I'm trying on shoes. So the script is really designed the same way. Is we know that the first thing they're going to say is "no thanks, just looking," because that's their script. But as soon as we take them out of their script and we say, "Well, if you were to move, would you be staying locally or moving out of the area?" They say, "Well, no, we're looking in the area." "Oh, really? When do you think that might be? You know, if you were to move, when do you think that might be?" All of a sudden, now that we've taken them off of their script, and their script is very simple. It's "no thanks, just looking." After that, they have no script, right? We're the professional. They're the amateur. Our script doesn't end with "may I help you," but their script does end with "no thanks, just looking." Do you see the difference?
Okay, so we've given a couple of analogies. My analogy was, yeah, my wife does this to me all the time. She'll ask me a question, ask me something else, come back to the same question, and she'll catch me. Yeah, she'll catch me, okay, but that's not what you said a minute ago. I'm like, okay, you got me. Okay, so she's very good at that. Many of you that are married, sometimes maybe you have a spouse that's really good at that, so you know what I'm talking about. And then you gave a shoe store example, so let's do the script now, and see how this works. So I'm going to be the realtor, and James, you're the prospect. Andrea, if you could go to the right-hand side of the script, just highlight the first 3 questions so everyone understands where we're at here. Okay, right-hand side, that's the left. Okay, there we go. Okay, so James, are you folks planning on making a move the next 3 to 6 months?
No, we're just looking around. We're just thinking about it.
Okay, now just stop there for a minute. That's what you're going to hear commonly, right? They say
Right.
things like, well, I don't know, we're just thinking about it. We just saw the information. Don't let that throw you off. That's called normal. That's
Right.
like you walking into the retail store and the salesperson says to you right away, can I help you? Of course you say, like most people, well, no, I'm just looking around. Doesn't mean you're a bad buyer because you're at cash 10 minutes later. So let's do it from the top again. Hey, James, I was wondering if you folks were planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months.
Not really. We're just thinking about it. We're just looking around.
Now, if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area?
No, we're looking to stay in the area. Yeah, we're just trying to find something that suits us in our price range.
Okay, and if you were to move, when do you think that might be?
Hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay, now, sometimes they'll actually say to me, well, I just answered that question. But it's amazing that most people don't. It's the identical question, whatever you agree, that Lewis picked up on. It's question 1 and 3. Now, here's what you'll sometimes hear them say. In question 1, when I ask them, are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? No, we're just thinking about it. We just saw the information. We thought we'd check it out. Question 2, if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area? They might say, well, I guess if we were to move, we'd be staying in the area. And the third question, and when do you think that might be? Well, we can't do it until the kids are out of school in June. Well, that's a different answer than how they answered question 1, right? Or we couldn't do it until the end of the year because my husband's getting a new job. Well, that's a different answer than question 1. So I have purposely included question 3 on the right-hand side or question 4 on the left-hand side, the buyer side, to mirror or mimic question 1. Why? Because it's amazing to me, and you'll find this, that we ask question 1, are you thinking about making a move? No, no, no. You ask them another question, well, if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area? And then you go right back to the same question, and what you find is they give you a slightly different answer. What do the police do if they're examining a suspect and the suspect says, no, I was at home that night? And then they ask another question, they keep questioning him, and then all of a sudden they come back to, so what were you doing last night? Well, I went to the movies. Okay, we got a problem now, right? There's inconsistencies on how the person's answering the question. So that's really what we're trying to do is if these prospects are absolutely not moving, there should not be any inconsistencies. They should be answering that question consistently all the way through the script. Very seldom, and this was amazing to me, did I have anybody say, you just asked me that question. And if they do, just say, oh, I'm sorry, and go right on to the next question. Do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? Now, the prospect believes that their job is to take you off the script. So they might say things like this to you. You might say, well, if you were to move, when do you think that might be? And you might have a talkative prospect that says, hey, Craig, how long have you lived in Newmarket for? And I might, I would just answer that and say, well, I've lived here my whole life, and then go right on to the next question. Do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? Your job is to always bring the prospect back to the script. It's almost like they think their job is to pull you off the script, just politely answer the question, and move them back to the script by asking the next question. We've got a few questions here, and I know we're running out of time. We've got a few questions here about, well, James, what do you say when in question number 4 on the right-hand side, or question 5 on the left-hand side, when you ask that question, do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? We've got a lot of people, members asking, well, what if they say yes? What if they say, yeah, I do have a realtor? Here's what I want you to say. You might want to write this down. You're going to say, well, are you 100% committed to that realtor? Now, if they are, I would just politely get off the phone if they say, yeah, we're 100% committed. It's my, it's my dad. It's my cousin. But if they say, well, I don't know, if they say anything other than, yes, we're 100% committed, here's what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, there's a tremendous difference, James. James, there's a tremendous difference between real estate agents and what they do and how much they charge to get the job done. Do you think you might be interested in meeting with me as well? There's a big difference between what realtors do and how much they charge.
Pick me. You're not saying pick me. You're saying, would you be open to interviewing me as well?
Yeah, I'm not saying don't speak to your friend that's a realtor. Don't speak to your neighbor that's a realtor. I'm just saying, would you be interested or open to meeting with me as well? Okay, so there's a tremendous difference between what real estate agents do and how much they charge to get the job done. Do you think you might be open to meeting with me as well? That's all we're trying to do on the phone. You're not going to convince them to list with you over the phone. You just want to get in the door. It's the job of the listing presentation. We're going to show you how to all be awesome at the presentation to make sure that if they are speaking to other realtors, that they pick you. But all you're trying to do is handle this job. So again, we'll go from the top. Do you have a realtor, James, to help you when the time is right?
Yeah, I've got a couple that I've been talking to.
Are you 100% committed to any one realtor?
Nope.
James, there's a tremendous difference between real estate agents and what they do to get the job done and how much they charge. Do you think you might be open to meeting with me as well?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and say, well, Craig, what do you charge?
Well, what do you charge?
Well, I don't know. I haven't seen your home yet. Ask me,
well, if they're a buyer,
hey, Craig.
If they're a buyer, it's even better. You can say, well, I don't charge anything. Actually, the seller pays the realtor fees.
Okay, so we've covered enough for today. We've been 90 minutes on this. I apologize we didn't get to all of the questions, but I do realize this. When we get into deeper waters here, the more we get into this, the more questions you're going to have. And the questions, of course, will get better and better and better, and so will our answers get better and better and better the deeper we get into this. Here's what I'm going to recommend in finishing up our first role play session for many of you. Not to say that we don't have a lot of experienced coaching members who have been in with for many months or many years with us here today, but all of you should memorize the script. You're going to start by memorizing it. Now that's going to sound a little bit goofy to you because when you're going to be reading the script basically when you talk to prospects. And at first you're going to think, well, this is awkward because these are not my words, these are Craig's words. But as you memorize it, as you internalize it, think about this. If you're saying the same things over and over again, you're going to become really, really good at the script. And pretty soon you won't see these as Craig's words anymore. They'll become your words. As you internalize this, this will be your script. Okay, and you won't have to memorize it. In fact, you're going to understand it. You're going to understand the idea behind the script. And if you really understand the script and what we're trying to accomplish, and you really believe in the offers that you're making, so you're speaking with conviction. You've got confidence, you've got conviction, you're not reading, you don't sound like a telemarketer, you're going to book a lot of appointments, and that's going to give you massive confidence. So it all works hand in hand. It all hooks together. So we're going to do our first ad clinic for many of you tomorrow. We're going to go take you to the ad generator, and we're going to explain to you how all the marketing works and how everything's organized for you in one place. So we're going to wrap it up for now. I want to thank Andrea and James for doing a great job as always, and we'll see everyone tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about marketing on our marketing ad clinic at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. on the East Coast. So take care, and that concludes today's role play.